Okay, Desire Baloubi, originally from Benin Republic, on the west coast of Africa, but a Yoruba. My roots are Yoruba from Abeokuta, actually.
Hello and welcome to Obehi Podcast. I'm your host, Obehi A14, and I strongly believe that everyone has a story to share. Now let's get started with this episode.
But I was born and raised in Benin Republic in the central region of the country called Dasazume. And I'm a full professor of English and linguistics at Norfolk State University, which is in the state of Virginia, in the United States of America. I've been here for over a quarter of a century. That's a long time, but that doesn't mean that I'm cut off. I separated myself from the continent. No, I go back home every summer. As a linguist, you got to be connected to your roots, where you actually naturally belong, and collect data and better understand what is going on as far as the language is concerned, because languages evolve, develop, and sadly, some of them die out.
In fact, I'm going to have a question to ask you there related to this dying out of language. But one thing that is very peculiar to this podcast is that we really take the time to understand the individual we have in front of us, because we are interested in your story. Of course, language, of course, is related also to history as it were, because we are talking about us in this sense. Could you please be kind enough to tell me about your childhood, where you were born? I want to understand, give us the privilege to understand what was happening around you at the time.
As I said earlier, I was born in the central region of Benin Republic. And as you know, Benin Republic is a French-speaking country. And I was born in a village called Kere. And Kere is part of that area called Dasazume. And my dad and my mom were farmers. They were not educated in the Western school at all. So they both spoke our native language, which is Idacha. And Idacha is the dialect of Yoruba, which interestingly enough, I actually researched as my dissertation topic. And I finally published it as a book entitled The Morphophonemics of the Dacha Dialect of Yoruba. It was published in the USA here in 2005. So I grew up around my dad, my mom, in a village setting. And when I completed primary school education, I was lucky enough to be one of those who were selected to go to grammar school. And to go to grammar school, I'm not bragging, but only a handful were selected because it was a boarding school and all tuition, everything paid for you, for all of them, for all students. I went to Lycée Béhanzin Grammar School. And that's in Porto Novo, also called like Chair or Humanities. That's the only city in Benin that has three names. Interesting. Yes. So I grew up around my parents, but I also grew up around people from different backgrounds, speaking different native languages, such as the Fon, the Mina, the Dendi, Batonum. And when you spend 7 years together in that kind of community, you end up being multilingual, which is a beautiful, wonderful thing. If we have time, then we will talk about the benefits of being at least bilingual.
That's interesting. That's interesting, Sam. You see, you know this part very well that in Africa, elderly people are looked upon as library itself. No, is that now when you start talking of when you were a child, now this is how many years have passed. Talking about it today, that is almost like something that somebody can need to pay for now to listen, you know, because that is rich. That is richness itself. That is why I really am very happy to talk to a lot of Africans who have of a certain age talking to me about their own childhood.
Yeah.
That is very important. All
I
right.
I was born in the early 50s, so that tells you something about my age. Yeah.
And that is a period of colonialism in Africa, no? Can you share something with us there? Because, like I said, we are passionate about our history, and
Yeah.
language is a very key part of it. Anyway, we just leave that aside, and we are coming to that just now.
Okay.
So, this is the period of colonialism now. So, what was the kind of dream that young people we have there growing up, looking all around there, like European? Because we didn't live it. In my time, Nigeria was already independent. So,
In the 50s, actually, so it's mixed feeling, I should say. As a child, you were in a hurry to leave home because you were tired of working on the farm, weeding, doing work with dad and mom in the cotton field, the tobacco, and feeding animals. You were tired, and you wanted to get away from home to gain some kind of freedom. Okay, do whatever you wanted. On weekdays, of course, you'll be going to school, but on weekend, instead of going to the farm, you will be free. Maybe you can go watch a football match or go watch movies. So we were between home traditions and also the Western culture. But growing up actually in the elementary school in my own time, it was sad to know that we were prohibited. We were forbidden to speak our native languages. If you were caught speaking your native language, in my case, Idacha, then they will pass like something to you. It could be a cowrie shell, could be something, and it goes from one person to the next. And at the end of the day, the primary school teacher would just count how many people and line them up, and you'll be flogged. They will whip you, and whip you. So it was strictly forbidden, and the damage caused is irreparable. It's irreparable. You see, so we started developing this kind of negative attitude to our languages, and because we were brainwashed and we were told they were primitive language, actually that they were not languages at all. And guess what? As time passed by, that was the opposite direction I started taking, because it's difficult to speak or to speak a foreign language, to learn a foreign language, a language that is not your own, and think in that language and express yourself fully. No, it's like you are wearing a coat that's too small for you, or it's too large, too big. It's not your size at all. So you think, you know how people think differently. Those who live in a mansion compared to people who live in huts, they think differently. You see, so no, it didn't match, it didn't work. So I decided to study my language, and surprisingly enough, I discovered the beauty of it and the wealth in our languages, starting with mine. And then when I do publications, I'll make references to other languages that I understand that I don't necessarily speak fluently. But as a linguist, it's a matter of collecting the data, you analyze it. Oh, It's one of the wonders of the world. Language is, and it's a criminal to force people to speak other languages other than their own.
Thank you so much for that. Even in my time too, because I was born much later now, and when we were going to school, it's something that they were also, they did it to you, they did it to me too, and they continue to do it today
Yeah.
as we speak.
Yeah.
So as a linguist, what do you want to suggest to educationists? Because you're a professor in this area, what would you say to that?
I would say to politicians, first of all, because it's a matter of political will. It's a political will to turn things around. If they actually could listen to linguists, and most specifically apply linguists, because in linguistics we have the theoretical part and you have the applied part. And the applied part actually takes data from the theory and applies it to the real world. You see, to comparing and contrasting people, the way they speak and how they perceive the world, because you perceive the world. Your perception of the world depends on your language and your culture. And there's diversity that is so beautiful. As a matter of fact, language is at the center of all human life. It's our humanity. Okay? It's our humanity. It's interconnected. It's connected to our thought, it's connected to social relationships, connected to even human evolution and human biology. Language is at the cross section of all of those areas. There's nothing you can do as a human being without using your language and culture. And when you're deprived of that, you are ruined completely. It's like a human being turned into an animal to whom they're teaching something new. So you can only develop reflexes, intuitions, but you're not yourself. You've been enslaved. So I would like all teachers to understand that, and especially our politicians, those who are governing our states, our countries, that I'm not saying we should stop teaching foreign languages, but we should put more emphasis on our national languages. And bilingual education is critical. It's critical because you will understand later on when if we talk about endangered languages, that's one way of preserving them, of stopping the languages from dying out. Okay, so we really need to focus on introducing our native languages into the educational system, at least from the beginning of the education, from that end of the continuum. Okay, early on, the kids should learn their mother tongue. They should be instructed in those mother tongue, and that helps. See the connection of language with the brain. The more languages you speak, the more intelligent and the more developed that part of the brain is developed. And you think through that language, and becomes easier for you to learn another language. But you start from your own. You don't start from a foreign language at all. As you grow up and develop, it's like you are in a house. You don't lock yourself up. You open that door in the morning, you open the window to have fresh air in, but also to see the outside world. That's what foreign languages represent to me in the build, if I may use that analogy with buildings. So it is critical that we start teaching our native languages. I know Nigeria has done a lot. I think it's a pioneer in that respect. And South Africa is catching up, and we need to do that. Very important. You see, Nigeria has the most languages. You see the number of languages spoken in Nigeria is over 100. And the next country will be Cameroon, you see. So as a whole, in the whole world, there are about a little above 7,000 languages. And you know what? 1/3 of those languages are in Africa.
And that should not be surprising. That should not be surprising at all. Because if you are looking at the birthplace of humanity, with all the diversity that the continent is holding, it is just understandable.
Yeah.
In this sense, it is cruel on the part of the colonialists to have make an effort to destroy these languages. Because these languages do not only tell of only Africans, it tells of humanity.
Yeah.
It tells of where we are coming from. At this point, let's go straight to you now, to your work. Because maybe here we'll be able to peel it out one piece at a time.
Right.
Tell us about your area of concentration in languages.
It's the human communication. That's my area of concentration. Okay. It is true that I started out with a little bit theoretical, descriptive part of the language, and I documented my native language, which was barely documented before. So I had to make sure that it's fully documented. So I'm glad that I have a book now that contains a lot of data. I'm not saying it should stop there. I'm encouraging young folks to use that book and then collect fresh data, because languages evolve, don't they? And so that I can look at what I've done. I cannot say it is perfect. There are certainly some blemishes, and encourage them to read through and to go beyond what I've produced. But then I use that as leverage, the morphophonemics of the Dacha language. Then I started looking into the way people use the language, okay? And it's established. It's established and it's proven that any language is used in a society has something to do with sociology. You see, you remember I told you people who live in a hut and mud houses, the way they talk will be, the way they talk and the way they think is certainly going to be different from those who live in mansions. They are well off, and you see also men and women, you look at the way they talk as well. If you collect data, you see their language use is related to status, social status. It's related to also gender. So women talk differently than men, and language use, the way we use it, depends on the circumstances. Of course, when you're mad, the way you talk will actually be different than when you're happy. When you are in a rush, where when you are in front of the judge, and the language even that court people use is specialized. You see, so it's fascinating. It's fascinating. There's also one subfield called pragmatics. Pragmatics will be it's really deeply rooted in the culture. You see how we make jokes, we crack jokes. If you are an Igbo and you have an Igbo joke, a Yoruba may not understand, may not get the joke, and only the Igbos will get it. Why? Because their reality in that same country that they share may be different. There may be something unique about it. You see? So that's why, even though we speak the same language, we may speak the same language. It depends on the environment. It depends on the culture. It depends on the context. So that is pragmatics. Pragmatics has to do with who are the participants, those who are engaged in the conversation, maybe their age, maybe their environment, and all of that combined. And you say one thing, and somebody who belong in understand what you mean when you're talking about this person is a donkey. It may mean one thing in one culture, but something else in another culture, you see. So it's fascinating. So my area is really, I love it. I have a passion for it. Is human communication. It's not just producing languages, the sounds, the words, and the sentences, which is purely theoretical. It's not about syntax. It's not about phonology purely or morphology. Yeah, it's about human communication. And I'm glad I was able to do a master's degree in addition to my PhD. I did a master's degree in information and communication sciences, and that helped me actually communicate with people, understand better, in addition to the light that my linguistic background, shed on conversations or circumstances where you have to exchange verbally or in writing. So that puts me in a good position of journalist, and now hosting a show called What's Up Africa. And I can conduct my show with anybody from any background, any discipline. And it's interesting to see that. So I'm inviting you to actually subscribe to my shows on Tempo Africa TV. And yes.
Sure.
Have I answered your question?
Sure. Of course, that is not the only question. We have a lot to talk about just now.
Okay.
All right. Now, even the term itself, language,
Yeah.
how do we even describe it to people? How do you describe language yourself?
Language is what separates, what sets human beings or human species apart from other species that God created. It's what makes us human. It's at the core of our humanity. Language is power. Language is related to the physiology. Language is related to your brain. This is what we call the Wolff-Sapir hypothesis, the claim, the connection between thought and language. Language is not thought, but language shapes our thought. You use language to express your thought. You use language to express your feelings, to make requests, to socialize. It's the only way that you can be part of a society, of a human society. If you have no language, it's a problem. There's no society without language. You can't imagine. There's no society we can imagine without language. And everything goes through language. Okay, if I were saying that this is how you see the world, it is through your language, it's through your culture that you perceive language. I see our proverbs and some expressions that we use, some phrases or some, yes, I said commonly used phrases. For example, if I say, if the French say "je suis content" and the English say "I'm happy," the Yoruba or the Dacha would say "inum dun," and the Yoruba "inum dun." That's, and you see the slight difference between Dacha and Yoruba. the Dacha being a dialect of Yoruba. Inum means my belly is sweet, my inside, my inner body is sweet. How do you compare that to I'm happy? You see, and when you are in trouble, you say, I'm in trouble. Oh, this is hard for me in English. But the Dacha will say, my eyes are getting red. You see. So you see that kind of beauty that languages actually contain. I mean, it's amazing. And as I said earlier, it's one of the wonders of humanity, of the universe, so to speak. Yes.
I agree with you. It's actually the thing that separates the human being from other animal. Because now, a language is not just, of course, language is everything. I want to believe that because it's the way you communicate, it's the way you transmit information.
Yes.
But it's also the way to conceal information, to codify it, because then you need to decode it. Because imagine now that, let's take a pretty simple example that you would know of because you are in the United States.
Yeah.
The experience of slavery of many Africans that were taken there
Exactly.
as slaves. Now, message had to be communicated among them. The reason they were able to rebel against their slave masters is because they understand themselves at the point. But before they understood themselves, the Europeans did something very terrible, which was the separation, because they thought if the people were going together, of course they speak the same language, it was going to be easier for them to organize themselves.
Yeah.
For this reason, they have to separate them. If they pick two if they say they take 20 of the same language, each of them is going to a different group that they will never have to meet again. But now, we are, as a people, as Africans, many of us have been meeting for several centuries.
Yeah.
Because all of us, we didn't just start as Nigeria, us as Ivory Coast, us as Ghanaian. We are people that have been moving from different parts. Are we coming from the Nubia? Are we coming from Egypt? Our culture have been crossing. So certain words might not necessarily mean the same thing in your place, but the sound, when it comes to my ear, I can feel something in it. So somehow we are going to be able to connect in a way. Yeah. So if we can understand it now, then we can conceal some information only for us, which another person sees, but he doesn't understand it.
That's right.
It becomes very powerful. Yes. I think the CIA and the KGB also exploit this a lot, no? Because they will send information that is coming to Russia, or maybe the Russia want to tap into information coming from the US. It might not necessarily because it is not English. Because it will be codified by people, only the people who understand the code can read it. Therefore, language is very critical in this sense, that it can be the difference between life and death.
Yes.
If it can be as that expensive, why are we not doing everything to make sure that we safeguard our language? Because now it's not just speaking. It has a lot of things about our life and death. That is my question.
That is correct. You're right. You're right. And let's take it back to the time of slavery. Yeah, they separated people, but what they didn't know was the connection between language and the brain, between language and culture, and between language and what is unstoppable. You separate people physically, but they preserve their brain unless you kill them. And they came from a culture. They cannot destroy that culture. You don't want people to destroy your culture, but it can be destroyed. And as it has happened to us, but it's there. Okay, it's there, but we need to revive it. We need to make use of it, because if you don't use it, you lose it. Okay, separate yourself from your culture, you lose it, and losing it means you're losing your identity. What happened is that Africa is multilingual. Yes, it's multilingual. I told you that there are at least 1/3 of the 7,000 languages are spoken in Africa. But when you look at the cultures, they're diverse, but they have commonalities. For example, most of African languages, what is a verb in an African language? Is a verb a noun, or is a noun a verb? You see, when you look at what a verb is in any African language, you know that it's completely different. So Europeans can actually describe it as a verb, and they are between, is it a verb, is it a noun? And also another thing that African languages have, which most Indo-Europeans don't have, is the tone. You can say odo, odo, odo. You see, same letter of the alphabet, if you use their alphabet, okay? But by changing the tone, you're referring to different realities, okay? You're referring maybe to the river, you're referring maybe to a mortar, or you're referring to a belly button. Odo, odo, odo. You see? So it's amazing. And that helps Africans and people of African descent to connect, to cross the T's and dot the I's. So they listen to each other, and they listen. And when somebody was unhappy, naturally they started speaking their own. Maybe they were Yoruba from the West Coast, or maybe they were Zulu from the southern part, and they saw the commonalities, and they used that commonalities to come up with what is known today as the African American language. Okay, and the Africans on the continent did the same thing. They did the same thing, mixing their native language with the foreign language, and they have the pidgin. Okay, and the pidgin, some people call it corrupt, but it's not corrupt. It has grammar, and it is the grammar of the African language that is actually transposed into those pidgin varieties. So the Nigerian pidgin, the Ghanaian pidgin, and the pidgin from Papua New Guinea. Those people are of African descent as well, for the most part. And by the way, Papua New Guinea is the area where there most languages are used. Okay, it's known for. They have like 800. Okay, Papua New Guinea, about 800.
800.
800.
That's a lot.
Yeah, different languages, and they were the ones that created the Topsin, kind of pidgin. Okay, and it's amazing. You see, we call African languages serial verb languages. Okay, serial verbs. You have those so-called verbs in series to construct a sentence. And that's what you see in the pidgin that we speak in Ghana, in Nigeria, Papua New Guinea, and the African American English. African American, they don't want the white America to understand them. They speak there in their community or next to the white. They speak that purely African American English, and their white counterpart don't understand. And they have the ability and the skills to create even new words based on circumstances. Okay, an event that's so important that has affected their lives. New words are created out of those things, and it's amazing. So that's what it is.
It's very interesting. But come to think of it, how do you really create language? I've been reflecting about it, looking at, for example, okay, it is true that they really say that it is a corrupt language, the Pidgin English.
Yeah.
But how can it be corrupt, really, to think of it? Because I am not English, I am a Nigerian.
Mhm.
I am being presented with a language which I'm going to put to test. How do I test it? I put it in my society.
Mhm.
I ask this language some things, it cannot say it.
Mhm.
Because I have been evolving for thousands of years, just like the English people that have been evolving for several years. They brought me this language that cannot really describe the reality around me.
That's correct.
Because the language cannot stand the test of time, I have to modify it to suit my society.
Hmm.
Therefore, it becomes my language now.
Yes.
It is no longer the English, because if you take it to England, the English people will not really understand the Greek code in it,
That's
because it becomes difficult for them. But it's just like the United States, no? They modify English, not just in the phonetics, but even in the writing.
yeah.
So I
Spelling.
can, yeah, I can see now that there is this pattern going on here. Can you
Yeah.
please help me understand, how do people form new languages?
Well, let me say this. We don't create languages. If you're talking about creating language, it becomes artificial language, like the language for computers, artificial intelligence, but it's always adaptation, because language, any language, is made of a limited set of rules. And with a limited set of rules, you can actually compose an infinite number of sentences, express an infinite number of ideas. So all we're doing is just adding new words, okay? Just new words. Just like, let me take the case of French. The debate between Macron and Marine Le Pen, a number of 10 new words, and two of them were actually predominant. They were very unique. When Macron was accusing Marine Le Pen of being, skeptical about climate change, right? He said in French, vous êtes climato-sceptique. And Marine Le Pen said, et vous, Macron, vous êtes climato-hypocrite. You are being hypocritical in your belief that climate change is real. So we call that neologism. And words to define them are just, they are arbitrary, they are conventional, and they mean nothing outside of the context in which they're used. They take on meanings only in specific context. So we don't create languages, but our language evolved naturally. Okay, they evolved naturally. They came from the brain, so naturally. And Noam Chomsky said, for example, Born Talking. There's a documentary by Noam Chomsky, famous linguist, American linguist, that all of us human beings are endowed with the talents, with the skills, ability to speak at least one language. Okay, so it's natural. So the pidgin that you speak in Nigeria, it's not an invention. You're still using the rule of African languages to when you are importing foreign words, foreign phrases, etc. They do not change the grammar of your native language at all. So it's adaptability with a limited set of rules. Language is very productive. That's what it is, if I may.
Yeah, but is it possible to change the rules, to change the rule of Pidgin English, for example, in Nigeria to suit only the Nigerian situation?
The Pidgin, that is the problem. Some people say, oh, it has no grammar. Okay, it has no grammar, and they say it's corrupt language. Well, we won't call it language per se. Pidgin is not a language until it. We start from the Pidgin form, okay, and we go to the Creole form. So Pidgin is creolized. What does that mean? When a whole generation speak nothing but the Pidgin. Let's say now you speak Pidgin, okay, and your children or their children, the only thing they know is the Pidgin. It becomes a language, okay. That's why we're talking about uh, Sierra Leone Creole, Creole in Haiti, okay, which is a mixture of the French, the language of the colonizer, and indigenous languages. So it always naturally fit into that because remember, it shapes our thought. So that's why people should not uh, have what they call Académie Française. The Académie Française is making sure that, yes, the language is spoken properly, that new rules are not being created. But that's vain. That's you don't do that because you are seeking purity. Purity means as it was spoken by our ancestors. Good gracious, no. Forefathers or ancestors, if they were to come back, they won't recognize. They may not even understand the type of Yoruba that we're speaking today. It's not because we're forcing the way. No, it just comes naturally based on the events, based on the sociology, on the psychology, the anthropology, all of the disciplines, even technology. You see, when you're talking about website today, we're using language of technology, adapting it to our language. And the syntax takes longer to change. Okay, the way we combine sentences to form combine words and phrases to form sentences, it takes longer for that syntax to change. Okay, and grammar is not limited to the combination of words and phrases to produce meaningful utterances. It could be even at the level of words. As they evolve, maybe we add prefixes or suffixes, or maybe those words will lose their prefixes and keep their suffixes, or words when they combine, especially the way we speak is different than the way we write. When we're writing, you spell it out, but when you're speaking, it flows, and in that flow, you cannot separate the words from one another at all if you're not a native speaker. And that's why it's so difficult for people learning foreign languages to quickly catch it, learn it, especially the verbal aspect of it. They say, I can't, they're going too fast. Too fast is what is natural pace for the native speaker.
All right. I want you to spend some time on this evolution of language because I believe it's very important.
Yes.
For example, my language is Esan. Now, among Esan people, there are names that are no longer very popular among younger people.
Mm.
So, which signal to me that probably this name are going to die up sometime. Names like Oko Dede. Oko in my language basically means the son of, no? Oko Dede will mean the son of Odede. Odede means elderly person, no?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Okosun. Okosun meaning the son of Osun. Of course, you know Osun, no? You understand what this means by Osun, no?
Yes.
The deity.
Yes.
Okay. Okoebo, something like Otiti, which is usually the name of a women, or a name for a woman or a female name.
Yes.
So this name, okay, now you can take a surname. You will see somebody that is maybe, my name is Obehi, no?
Yes.
Obehi Okodide, but anyway, that is not my name. Okodide is not my surname. I'm just making a reference to that, no?
Right.
But as a young person, having the name Okodide is very rare among Asian people. As a young person, having the name like Okogun, which is the son of Ogun, it's not common anymore.
Yes.
So this is just among Asian people.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you want to say anything related to this, and so how language eventually grow, maybe they die off.
Okay. Let me speak to the first aspect that you raised, saying that the younger generations no longer like or bear those names like Okodede, Okosun, etc. It's part of, it's one of the consequences of the impact of colonization, the damage that colonization did actually in terms of our culture. If you see your language, you see your culture as primitive, not productive, not elegant, not human enough, what do? You start copying the masses, consciously or unconsciously. So that's why our parents or their parents were reticent. They were reluctant and actually opposed to sending their kids to the white man school, educate their sons and daughters the Western way, because they knew they would lose their way. They would deviate from the cultural norms. Yes, it is true that cultures change, but that kind of attitude is psychological, it's alienation. That's why we're calling for people to decolonize their mind. And some of us, even at this age, still have a colonized mind. And we need to deconstruct those myths that a language is superior to another and that a culture might be better off, our complex of inferiority, and on the other side, complex of superiority. That partly explains why people are not bearing those names these days, because the younger the parent, you see, the more affiliated to the Western world they're going to be. They just follow, right? They're followers, losing their identity, thinking that their cultures are kind of handicap instead of being a gateway to producing wealth. And even the Europeans, they're aware of it. Why are we complaining? Over 60 years of independence, and we're still not sovereign nations. We're still being dictated what to do and how to do it, who to be president, who to be prime minister, and why? Because we have the resources, we have the wealth, we attract them, and what attract them is not our physical bodies, it's the resources that we have, you see. And some of them are also fascinated by our culture, but they are less interested in our culture than they are in the resources, the diamond, the gold, the uranium that we have. And we have to be aware of that. For us to be really sovereign, to be powerful nations and continent, we've got to go back. Got to go back and adapt our cultures to the modern world and make it work for us, because no nation on earth has ever prospered or developed through foreign languages and foreign cultures. It's always going to be their own languages and their own cultures. Japan is Japanese language and culture. Chinese, the Chinese language and culture, the Mandarin and the other dialects. That's what it is. No matter where you go, the French, the English, name it. Only in Africa. It's only in Africa that you will find that kind of paradox.
Okay, that contradiction can be even interesting now.
Yes.
In that Let's take a case in sight, Nigeria.
Yes.
I subscribe to the opinion, this is my personal opinion, that Nigeria is not a free country yet. It's still a kind of a colony for the British, no? Which
Yes.
of course by extension, this is why it is across Africa, no?
Yes.
But say, for example, we want to have a free Nigeria, Nigeria for the Nigerians.
Yeah.
Which language are we going to use? Just the language. Tell me about that.
Exactly. And that's an argument that people who don't want us to unite, they use. They use that argument very frequently. They say, oh, you have so many languages, say it's over 100 in Nigeria. And you ask me, which one are we going to use? In essence, you got to understand that the more language you speak, the richer you are spiritually, and the better your ability to think in different modes. Because if one language is expressing a culture and it's expressing a worldview, then if you speak two, you're living in two worlds. It means somebody coming from left, the way they think, you understand it. Some people coming from right, the way they think, you understand it. And we act based on our perception of our environment, our perception of other people, and perception of the whole world. That's how we act or reflect. That's how we make decisions. So if the better information, the better informed you are, the better your decision making will be. So it is important. Let me tell you this. The American society did not think, and by the way, English in general with non-native speakers is the most spoken, it's at the top of the list, the number one, okay, number one language spread out across the globe. And they felt that it wasn't necessary to learn other languages because wherever you go, somebody will understand you. You find an interpreter, and you actually, to go to Nigeria, in the urban areas, just speak English, and you communicate with people. And when we're talking about social relationship, we're talking about interacting with people, it's language, the tools of communication. So they thought they didn't need to learn other languages, but that was an oversight.
I can see that.
Not knowing that it is through the language, the native languages, that those people think. They think, and when I'm saying thinking, they think through. Think anything that they want to do, they have to think it through the lenses of their culture, okay? And that helps them design decision-making process. When in September 9/11, okay, September 2001, when America sadly was, victim of that barbaric terrorist attack. In the aftermath of it, they decided to change their strategy. And what did they do? They started learning Arabic, because for them, people speaking Arabic are the terrorists. They are the terrorists, and they need to learn the way they think, because they couldn't fathom why a human being will go and destroy other people's lives in the name of a religion. Those called radicalized, because Islam is a religion of peace, of tolerance, but people use it. So they want to learn Arabic so that they better understand those people. You see, what causes wars and misunderstanding, what it's about not being able to communicate. It's not being able to understand other cultures. So they're at loggerhead because they believe their interests are actually antagonistic. Whereas in reality, as Maslow proved it on his table of hierarchy of needs, we're all human beings and we aspire, we want basically the same thing. Some people want it less, other people want it more, especially if you're greedy in terms of material things. But spiritually speaking, who doesn't want to grow and if it is possible, become an angel and be sitting or be seated next to God? That's happiness, and happiness is relative. Put it back into its cultural context as well. But everybody wants to be happy. How do you get to that point? Would depend on where you live, your circumstances, your culture, the way you see the world. So that's what happened. And now,
Please go.
you're talking about languages, how they die out. You see those people who don't want to be called Odo, what was that name again?
Okay, I said something like Oko. The father name is Oko Dede, Oko Gun, Oko J.
Exactly. Those who don't want to have anything to do with Okode, Okoshu, etc., are those who are separating themselves from their culture. You see, they're losing their identity gradually, and they start hating their own languages. And although they may understand Igbo or Yoruba or Hausa, they don't speak it to their children anymore. Okay, maybe they speak it sporadically or in only limited instances. And finally, their children, they understand, but they can't speak, okay? And can you imagine that generation of people who understand but can't speak? Imagine what will happen to them. That language that they understand will never be used in their own family. You see, that's how languages die out. There is this language called Busu in Africa, only spoken by 8 people. 8. Only 8 people. Because those people die, and that language has never been given the opportunity of being taught, of being passed on from generation to generation. They say, no, that's primitive. No, don't speak that language here. No, speak English. We don't understand that. So even the United Nations and UNESCO more specifically has realized that one of the best way to preserve languages is to give them equal right. Give them equal right, no matter how many people speak the language, give them equal right to speak those languages to people, to your nearest environment, and introduce languages into the education system, side by side with foreign languages. But because they don't have the money, they don't have the political will, and not having the political will is the real issue, because this thing can be done. And coming to answer your question is, see, it's about demos. The Greek demos means people, right? It's about demography. When you go to an area that is, let's say 90% Yoruba, and maybe 5% something, another language and culture, and then another 5% another language. Which language will you choose as the official or the lingua franca of that area or that state? It will be the Yoruba.
Predominant language,
Predominant language. But when you're doing that, you're also encouraging the teaching and learning of the minority languages in the elementary school, because those people were born into those languages and those minority cultures, and starting from their own languages and cultures will help them even better understand the predominant language, being more, let's say, functional in that predominant language. But don't kill their language. Otherwise, their minority language will die out. But that's part of them. That's their soul. So you're killing their soul. You don't want that. You want them to preserve it. Okay. So UNESCO said, yes, you need to just give people right to learn and preserve, keep their own languages and culture, be they a minority or majority. It's important, okay? You go to another area, maybe it's another language, the same principle. Just don't deny anyone the right to learn, to teach and learn their own languages. You see, when you say to somebody, I see where you're coming from, this is very, very important. It's very important.
We say this often among Nigerians, no? Because if you tell me, I was interviewing a professor a couple of days ago, a week ago. He told me his name, although he's not actually a Nigerian, but because he have a Yoruba name, of course, we made joke of it. I said, so I'm talking to my brother now. So that is a Yoruba name. Of course, I wanted him to confirm it, and he confirmed it, no? Of course, by looking at the predominant languages in Nigeria, you should be able to identify not just the name, but where you are actually coming from in Nigeria. And
exactly.
That is beautiful. But I'm looking at how do we make all of them equally valid? Now, of course, you did suggest that.
Yes. When we go state by state and we work on we get the data and we know what languages are predominant, then we're taking it from the grassroots, from the rural areas back to the federal government, and we see which of the languages are actually predominant. Okay, you see maybe in the South, you select maybe there are 5 languages or 3 languages, and then the central part, these are the languages, the northern part. You make those languages official. Those are the languages you introduce into the education system, but without actually forbidding the introduction of the minority languages at the base level, at the local level, because it's critical that it be so. And wait and see. When you are an Igbo, yes, you were born in an Igbo area, but that's not where you're gonna die necessarily. Okay, mobility is also part of development. And mobility is people have the freedom to move and looking for prosperity. It doesn't work for me in this state. I'm going to go to the neighboring state, or maybe further up or further down. And if that is a matter of language policy, not language politics, language policy. If we adopt such a strategy, such a policy, it becomes natural. Looking for employment, looking for a job. If language is a determining factor, you see. So before I move to Ogun State or to Bago, I better learn some Yoruba, because outside of my even official job, most of the people will be the Yoruba. And I don't want to keep calling myself Igbo and resisting, speaking Yoruba. It's just so beautiful when you can speak your Igbo and you also can speak Yoruba, and you're moving across. And if you have skills in Hausa, those are the people we're looking for in the 21st century, people who can speak more than one language. So we should encourage bilingual, if not multilingual education, not just monolingual. Monolingual is impoverishing, but multilingual is empowering.
I see some people who can speak several multiples of languages in Nigeria. They know how to speak Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba. I think we really can comprehend a lot of languages. Our brain can do it.
Yes, if we want to, yes. And we start from a young age. That's why children learn faster, but they forget quicker. Adults learn slower, but they keep it almost forever.
All right, now let's talk about your language, because you have done a project on that, the language you speak in Benin. Yes. So tell me more about it. What would be your project, and tell me more about this language. Let's fall in love with this language.
Okay, my language, as I said earlier, is a Dacha. And the Dacha people in the central region of Benin have their roots in the Yoruba culture. Some of them came from Oyo, from Egba, from Igbomina, from Abeokuta, from all over what you would call the Yoruba world. And for one reason or another, for different reasons, and you understand that it was, those wars among ourselves and the kingdoms fighting, the kind of rivalry. That's what actually caused people to leave. But most of them are now still in Nigeria, but some of them left. A lot of them sold into slavery, and language evolved based on the environment. Okay, the words that you use to describe the reality. Of course, if the realities are not the same, you will coin words. And if you're living with other people, you mixed. Okay, you are a Yoruba, originally Yoruba from Abeokuta or from Egba, but now you've come to a land that is dominated by the Fon, and you have to collaborate. So you're trying to understand them, and they're trying to understand you. And natural phenomenon, which is borrowing, starts to happen. Okay, instead of using your Yoruba word because they don't understand it, you say that word and you say, oh, by the way, this is this word. Okay, and that word is, you go to the marketplace, that's what you hear most of the time. It starts penetrating your own language. Okay, and you happen to learn the phone, they happen to learn the Idacha, and the phone is borrowing from Idacha, the Idacha is borrowing from the phone. And people in Nigeria today will say, oh, Idacha is not pure Yoruba. That's why we call it the dialect. Even in Nigeria, there are several dialects of Yoruba. People in Abeokuta don't necessarily speak Yoruba the same way people in Ibadan do. Not necessarily. Some words of the accent, even the accent, okay, will change a little bit. And there will be some disturbances because if the other group one group is using a different word for the same reality, okay, referring to the same thing, you don't automatically get it, okay? So we have dialects of the same languages. So Idacha happened to be a dialect of Yoruba. When you examine it, you trace it historically, you know it came from Yoruba. It came from people who left Egba and came to the Dacha area in Benin on the other side of the artificial border called the Egbakoku. You see, they want to remember where they came from, and they named their market Egbakoku. And they name another market Gbomina, which is Igbomina. If you look at the map, the linguistic map of Nigeria. So it happens that because of that mixture of accent, mixture of words borrowing from the phone, when the Dacha is speaking, it's a little bit difficult. You know, it takes time. It takes, clearing your ear, actually, if you are Yoruba, to understand the Idacha. But on the conversely, the Idacha understand at least 80% of the Yoruba maybe saying. And in terms of religion, going to church, the Bible in Yoruba anyway, you see, so the older generation would speak Yoruba fluently, but the younger generation would speak it less fluently and speak Idacha, pure Idacha, more frequently than they do the Yoruba. That's what happens. So when I go to conferences, I mix with my brothers, as he said, from Nigeria, we converse. but when I'm speaking, they don't necessarily always get what I'm saying. So it's fascinating. Yes.
Absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
what about in terms of writing? Is it the same? Idacha, is it the same as the Yoruba that you will hear in Abeokuta or in Ogun State, for example, or is it different? And how much of this language in Idacha is actually written as against spoken?
Yes. You would say that Yoruba is actually uh, one of the earliest languages that have gone through the writing process. Okay. So the Bible, I was talking about the church and then Christianity, religion. Uh, very few African languages are actually written. We are still in the oral stage of most languages. They are spoken but not written. And of course, a language always begins with the oral, it's verbal. And later on, for the need to address the need of preservation, documentation, that's why writing was invented. Okay. But writing actually is as old as people who lived in the cage, because when you do archaeology, you see there are some rocks with some arrows, some carvings. It's already their way of leaving something behind, okay? Leaving language prints behind. So, but Africa, uh, invented its own script, own alphabet. But until now, very few languages do have their own script, their own alphabet. Okay, but some do have. But even the Yoruba is still using it's the Roman alphabet. You see, the letter of the alphabet in Yoruba, except for some unique script with dots, at the bottom, like the sh, esheun, okay, without the dots at the bottom would be eseun. Although even some dialects say eseun instead of esheun. You see what I'm saying? So, do we have purely African script or alphabet? Some languages, Oromo, for example, some in Ethiopia, they have their script, what looks like maybe Japanese script or Chinese script. So just like other languages in the other part of the world. Otherwise, the majority of our African languages still use the Roman script, or Roman alphabet.
Or looking around recently, I come across many scripts actually that are coming from Africa. No,
Yeah.
there are quite many of them anyway, but I'm not going to go there. But my argument, I just brought that out so at least we can have a kind of a context here in relation to what you're saying.
Mm.
What does it really take to have a functioning script in African languages? Same, because in my language too, there is no script. The only script that we have is just like the one in Yoruba or in Benin, or in that you have this Roman number.
Mhm.
Sometimes you have a flesh on top, for example, like Odo, meaning a husband. No, you
Yeah.
have O, then you have a slash on that.
Yeah.
That is O, which is different from O.
Mm.
You know, so but I mean, what will it take to have a script of your own for your language that should be recognized? Is this something that needs to be political, an individual? How do we manage to have it so that we can document the language? Because if it is not written,
Yeah.
it really risks be lost so soon.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. What can be done? It's not political. It's language policy. Okay, its political will is to give the power to the people who speak the language, so that they can organize themselves, so they can decide for themselves. Nobody should dictate what they should do or how they should do it. They help them provide the means, the tools for them, and you will see it will be amazing how quickly people will come up with a script for their languages. At some point, in Benin, that's when we were doing the so-called socialism, involved in socialism, and a script was imposed to everybody, and that script was actually the phonetic transcription of languages. So you write a language the way they sound, and borrowing from what I would call worldwide the International Phonetic Alphabet. Because using the International Phonetic Alphabet, you can transcribe any language at all. But then you still borrowing from the Roman alphabet, okay? So the ch, for example, it will be a T symbol, the combination of the phoneme t, and then the sh symbol, which looks like an S, but larger S, okay? And some people write the C with a V on top of the C. So that's linguists have actually struggled to make sure that that international phonetic alphabet will fit all languages. So it's artificial, it's from top down. We're supposed to describe, we're not supposed to prescribe. And that's the beauty of applied linguistics. But those who prescribe are those who actually believe it should come from the top. Ignoring that people at the local level, the indigenous, are intelligent, they're smart, they know what they need, they know what they can do, they know what is at their disposal. So they reach consensus and they do what they want to do. So empowering local communities would result in developing a script, okay? If we were to say, okay, to make things easier, let's adopt a national, so like across Nigeria. It can also be done, okay? But you need to take input from all localities, all people in their different communities. You need to take input from them to build that kind of national script that will cut across Nigerian languages, for example. Okay, the Arabic, you see the Arab world scattered, it's all over, but it's the same script that they use. You see, across countries, and that's not impossible. It's a matter of a political will, the language policy, and giving power to the local communities.
It's true that it might appear not an emergency. The question, even though that is not an emergency of this major language is going extinct, but it is very important that we preserve the language.
Yes.
So what is the best way to preserve it now? Of course, we are living in a different time. We are living in a different world. We are living with different tools. I don't think it is going to be possible to rely on the old things like, okay, yeah, the language here have always been oral, so let's keep it oral. Well, I don't think it's going to work now because everything goes digital.
Yes.
If UNESCO, for example, are investing a lot of money in UNESCO projects all across the world, I don't know if anything like that can make sense. Let's document also African languages.
Yes.
Before they go extinct, we can have everything from beginning to the end so that at least people that are going to be here 1,000 years from now, they can have it to see. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yes, you do. You're making sense. You're making sense. Yes, you are. Definitely. Yeah. And what I can say is that people think it's not urgent, but the urgency is there. If people are thinking in short terms, they are missing the point. We got to be thinking long terms. And when you're thinking long terms, you start today. If you really want to be successful, you don't wait till the opportunity crosses your path. You got to be preparing, right? It's Abraham Lincoln who said, if you're given this task that consists of chopping down a big tree, and overall it will take you 10 hours to do so, what do? You spend 6 hours spent 6 hours actually doing what? Getting your tools ready, okay? Sharpening your tools. 6 hours sharpening your tools. And then the remaining 4 hours will be easy for you to chop down that big tree. So it's about preparation. And Powell, late General Powell, Colin Powell said, what is luck? Luck is when opportunity and preparation comes together. So we got to start now. Tomorrow begins today. We're talking about tomorrow, it begins today. So the sooner the better. Can you imagine? I left high school and started university in the early 70s, and things haven't changed. And I've been talking about, how can we introduce our languages into the education system? At least make it like an option. Yes, we're forced to learn Greek, we're forced to learn Latin, we're forced to learn English if we're a Francophone country, predominantly French. And later on at a different stage, they introduce a Spanish. They say you can choose either Spanish or German. And nowadays, maybe it's Chinese and Russian. And at no point have they thought of saying, okay, the Yoruba, if the school is in a predominantly Yoruba area, you have that option instead of choosing between Spanish and German. What have we gained from learning the German and the Spanish?
So that we can go there to work there.
And did you listen to Marine Le Pen about their immigration policy? Even Macron about the immigration policy. You know how many people have died in the sea, trying to cross over to Spain or to Europe from Africa, leaving their own wealth and resources behind because they're not properly managed, because they're actually, in the hands of the outside world, of those powers, foreign powers. You see, it's critical that we start now. And to avoid language to go from going extinct, and what you want to do is, the best way is to introduce it into the educational system, is to speak it, spread it across, speak it to your kid. Your kids will learn it as the first language. They'll teach their own children, and that is very important. We got to invest into actually researching and documenting our languages. That's why I chose to document the Dacha dialect of Yoruba, and people have followed in my footsteps, and they're doing the work. And we should keep on doing that. Otherwise, it's so sad to hear over the radio or the television that the last speaker of language X just passed away. And they passed on with all the knowledge, the indigenous knowledge that they have. You see, in the field of medicine, we have so many resources, and people keep it secret. Not necessarily because they keep it secret, but they can't write anything down. And how much can you actually memorize if it just remain oral? Okay, so and especially when also the Western world call it juju, they call it voodoo, like it's negative, so that becomes problematic. So we need to have the language policy again. We need to have the means, and we shouldn't say that the budget, we don't have the money. If you think that education is expensive, wait till you get none.
You're going to have to try ignorance. You see, now that is another important question that probably we're going to have to discuss another time, which is how to do with voodoo, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we are trying to read our reality through the lens of another person.
Yeah.
This is wrong.
It's wrong. That is correct. You see the word religion. Religion in Latin means reconnect. It's like a kind of reconnection. Reconnection to what? To whoever you believe created you. So religion per se is not in the beginning means nothing really, because that's man-made. What is real and undeniable is spirituality, and the African people are spiritual people. They believe they believe in a supreme being, in a creator. There's no African language that does not have the equivalent, the word for God. There's none.
That
So
is God consciousness.
yeah, yes, it's anyway, the level of spirituality is so high that they can bring in any type of religion, and African will adopt it. They will embrace it, okay, wholeheartedly, and ready to deviate from their own that has been called all kind of bad names, the voodoo, which is actually in essence spirituality. But the Western culture sees it as the demon, as the devil, because they don't understand it. Okay. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? It is true that voodoo that we come up with medicine that are actually effective, right? And of course, there's no culture that doesn't have its ups and downs. There's no invention that doesn't have advantages and at the same time disadvantages. The Western world created the guns, okay? They created their own gun, they manufactured it. Originally, it wasn't to kill people. It was for hunting, it's for protecting from because they were living, not necessarily in urban areas. There were no cities, okay? So you had to defend yourself, protect yourself. And later on, as the people evolved, we ourselves started acting like those dangerous animals. So people start protecting their lives with guns and then wars and rivalries, etc. So gun wasn't manufactured to kill people, but nowadays we do that. Voodoo was not there for humanity, to destroy humanity. It was to better interpret humanity and solve problems, human problems. That's what it is. So you have those so-called witch doctor. Can you imagine? Witchcraft is seen as negativity, right? But then the language evolved and we call them, oh no, traditional healers, which is more positive, right? So some people know how to cure, and the same people who know how to cure know also how to kill. But not all traditional healers are sorcerers. You see, not all of them are healers. So we need to use those good things, good aspects of our indigenous knowledge to develop. There was a fellow traditionalist, actually, a king or a chief who said, you know what? Our hunters, when they go hunting in face of danger, they can disappear. If they have that knowledge, that ability, and when they disappear, they find themselves somewhere else. Maybe we can use that knowledge to develop unique means of transportation. You instead of flying with all the risk of it, all the risk of the plane crashing, the cars, etc., and the train, you can go from one place to the next without any risk of getting involved in an accident. And I thought, yes, that makes sense. And instead of trying to go to the moon and coming up with a heavy budget, billions of dollars, the Africans can develop their own NASA, and go to the moon, go wherever they want to go. And that's part of our realities. So indigenous knowledge, part of our deeply rooted in our culture, in our languages, should be encouraged for the good that we can do, not for the harm that we should prevent.
At the end of the day, it's about knowledge.
Yes.
Knowledge is light.
Yes.
And more and more people that have this knowledge are dying. We don't have we have the possibility of able to tap into those knowledge and put it at the center of everybody.
Yes.
I think it was Chinua Achebe who was being interviewed in CNN, and he said something very important, that knowledge is culture in this sense is not the property of anybody, because they were referring to him as the father of African literature.
Yes.
And he said, nobody can be the father of African literature because this is the property of the whole people.
Yes.
It belongs to all of us. So it is not your property.
Actually, he was referring to the English language. He said, you came, you colonized us, and you imposed English on us. It doesn't belong to you alone anymore. We adapted, into our own culture, and we speak it the way we want. That makes more sense to us. And if you don't understand it, that's your
That's your,
problem.
that's your, that's important. I like that. All
Yeah.
right. Now, what do you see as the greatest threat to our languages? Because now we don't want our languages to die.
Yeah.
But what actually the risk now? What is the threat you see against our African languages?
Yes, it's the refusal to decolonize our mind, the refusal to come up with a new paradigm that will help our languages actually develop and our cultures remain, revived and adapted to our new world, our new environments, our needs, because the needs do change, the culture do change as well. As long as we keep just mimicking, we remain puppets of the foreign powers of France, England, Russia, so on, and you name it, then that's a serious thought. That is a serious threat. We need to embark upon a new road, a road of sovereignty, a road of telling our own stories in our own languages, because our history has been written by other people for their own benefits. It is being distorted. We need to show the true version, the real, the authentic version of our story. And that's how we can preserve not just our languages and cultures, but what I would call our African identity.
Now, how can people connect with you? Maybe they want to, I don't know, maybe you have some books there that you are selling, or they want to reach out to you, they want to learn more about what you do. And because I remember you did make mention of a program, a TV program that you have there. Use these few seconds to promote yourself. Please go.
I usually don't promote myself. I promote ideas and I promote ways of implementing those ideas. And number one, communication. Communicating among ourselves, expressing our pains, expressing our joys, sharing our accomplishments is a uniting factor. So you come to my show, What's Up Africa. If you are a francophone, it's Que faire l'Afrique, and all you need to do is uh, go to www.tempoafrictv.com, and my show is there. And there are numbers there that you can call. You can WhatsApp them. It means you can communicate using WhatsApp to write to us. And you have +1 612 2020. That's the number, for example. It's, uh, it's very important. If you want my personal email, you can communicate with me through email, and that is ariwochepo@gmail.com. Let me spell it out. It's ARIWOCHEP as in Paul, O as in orange @gmail.com. And you will reach me. If you want to come to my show, it's on Friday at 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, and we'll make things happen. It's about you. What are you doing to make things happen, to change Africa, to turn things around? Everything we've talked about today, if it's in the area of languages that you're working, come and share with us. It may be in politics, it may be in the economics, it may be in the environmental protection, and no matter what discipline, engineering, technology, come share with the rest of the world. Come share with all Africans on the continent and the sixth region of the continent, which is the state of the African diaspora. Come share with us. And it goes beyond that. The whole world will hear what you're doing, how you coming up with initiatives to produce alternative energy, okay, making light, from the sun, making light from the residues or the trash that we we see everywhere. Okay, so that's what it is. That's what it is. We are building Africa, but the foundation must be really rock solid. Rock solid. It's important. And
Thank you.
destination is African sovereignty and African renaissance. And I believe it starts now. It starts today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. That's really very important. All right. Now, what do you think is the best strategy to preserve African languages?
Yes, just like I said before, if you don't use it, you lose it. Okay, if you don't use it, you lose it. So we have to speak it, speak all the languages. Okay, speak our languages for different purposes. Okay, even if it's for religious purposes. Uh, uh, Stop conducting prayers or masses in Latin, in French, or in English. If you're in your local environment, use the local language. Spread the words through your African languages. Speak it to your children so that make sure that your children speak it and they can write it, and their children will speak it and they will write it as well. Because as I said before, no nation on earth has ever developed in other people's languages and culture. We need to introduce legislation so that our African languages become our official languages and call a spade, French, English, and those Portuguese, Chinese, they are what they are, foreign languages. I'm not saying that we don't need them, because if you have a building with no door or no window, you will choke, you will die. We're not closing our doors. We need doors, we need windows, at least for fresh air, ideas coming from the other parts of the world to better understand how they perceive the world, to borrow from them, just like they borrow from us. Because mathematics, geometry, all of that, you remember, it came from Africa. Africa being the cradle of humanity. We had everything. Now we're losing everything, and we should not allow that to happen.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time and the conversation. This is really be very interesting. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
If you enjoy this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi Podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewafo. Thank you so much for listening, and talk to you in the next episode.